VC, how are we? Good to see you again. It's been a little while. Just the weather's getting warmer, so we're a bit more outdoors, and just finding it a little bit harder to get time to do this sort of stuff, on this little screen. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. I'm going to try and do a, clear from the title, the big Zeppos, Led Zeppelin, ranked 1 to 4. I mean, I'd love to have all the albums so I can rank all of them for you, but I'm missing House of the Holy, Presence, No Code, Oda, and but other than that, I've pretty much got the rest of them, of the studio albums. Haven't got the soundtrack one. Anyway, but I was so stoked when I finally completed the first 4. Probably since I've been collecting albums. Sorry about that. Okay. Collecting vinyl records for probably 5-6 years now. To get definitely the first 4 was something that I really strive to do. You could easily just go and purchase them at your local shop, but I wanted to find, if not originals, some not recent represses, some stuff with a bit of history, and just find them just by natural progression. So never actually owned any Zeppelin albums growing up, which is interesting. I guess they were reasonably, they're on the radio a reasonable amount. I know my local watering hole, we used to go there and play pool in the back room and have some refreshments, and they had a jukebox there that had the Zeppelin albums on the jukebox, and I remember just putting a lot of coinage into those jukeboxes. So here we go. So the first 4 Zeppelin albums. I'm going to just go through a little bit about each album. Now, obviously their history and their course and their existence has been well documented, but what I've loved is I've had this magazine from, I think it's Uncut, makers of Uncut. Basically, it just goes through all the studio albums. So it's a magazine I just got from a record store, I don't know, a while ago. And I did have actually read this previously, but then I thought, as I was reading, I was thinking it'd be good to, as you listen to an album, to read about it as well. So this basically goes through each album and gives you newspaper clippings and critics' views, and so really this is great. So these are stuff you easily find in record stores, just on the floor often, and I think this cost me a $5, and some great history in these things. So I got a Stones one as well, which I might try and incorporate with my Stones albums. But anyway, so pretty much with the albums, I listened to the albums while I read about them, and then I listened to them focusing solely on the album as well after that. And then basically did I press start? Yes, I did. Okay, cool. Then I basically rated each song and averaged out the scores and came out with scores. Alright, so I'm just going to go through a little bit about each album, not too much. Everybody knows them really. Number 1, well, just Led Zeppelin basically, with the Heidelberg aircraft there, with the flames, legendary stuff. This came out, so I've written some stuff down. So this came out in January '69. Actually, while it's been recorded, they're actually still known as the New Yardbirds, but then it was sort of put to them, well, not probably put to them, probably not nicely, but basically they don't own that name, so they changed their name to Led Zeppelin, which had something to do with a few members of the Who, and they were talking about that conglomeration would go down like a Led Zeppelin, and there you go, it stuck. So that was probably one of the starts of some sort of the names and of a few court cases that they had to, out of court sort of settlements they had to sort out. Zeppelin was actually the company of the German company that built the aircrafts that had an issue with their name as well, and I think they changed it to Knobs for a while, something like that. But anyway, so basically in about, I think 68, What I wrote down here. So October 68, they changed their name to Led Zeppelin, and this came out in January 69. It reached, interesting, it didn't go to number 1, it reached number 6 and number 10 in the US. And I was thinking, what was released at that time? What could knock that off number 1? And then you had, so basically you had Creedence Clearwater Revival, Bayou Country, and this is released in the same month, so January 69. You had Yellow Submarine and Neil Young's debut in 69, January. So there's some pretty stiff competition there. So basically, just a little bit about it. So Jimmy Page, lead guitarist and sole remaining member of the Yardbirds, they had some dates to fulfill, some gigs to fulfill in tour in Scandinavia. So he was the sole remaining member. So he needed some band members. And he took Peter Grant with him as well, the manager. And he was looking at what was his name? There was a guy, Terry Reid, wasn't it? He wanted to front the band and sing, but he had contractual sort of agreements already to tour with the Stones. He was a session musician, Stones and Cream. But Terry Reid recommended some young and untried talents of Robert Plant and John Bonham. And so he recruited them, and John Paul Jones was someone that Page had been a session musician with. So he took them along too. So they did their tour and came back and started recording this album. Now, it said this actually took 36 hours to record this album. It was at Olympic Studios in London. So 36 hours, sometimes referred to as a live album, but basically what they're just trying to say is that it was minimal wasted time. And Page and I think Grant actually paid for the sessions, and that was important because it meant that the album was going to be their way rather than Atlantic influencing them. Just great stuff. So and then I'll go through what I'll do. I'll go through each one, and then I'll just pick out tracks and give you the ranking and rating. All right, so that is Zeppelin. That's Zeppelin. Okay, not the end of the video. Alrighty, Zeppelin 2, otherwise known as the Brown Bomber. Now this is actually not pencil or something if you get on there, or pen, as I sort of contemplated rubbing it out and thought, oh, it's actually it's all part of the Heidelberg. Obviously brown with a bit of colour here now, an explosion there. So this came out in October 69. So, but this reached number 1 in US and the UK. Just sort of other albums released in the same month. So it's just incredible, like when you think about it in this sort of terms, the albums that are released in these months. I mean, you're lucky to get this quality. You're not going to get this quality this probably time in, this day and age. But maybe you might get something like this over the year, a few albums. But these are basically tremendous, acclaimed, legendary albums that are released each month during these sort of 60s and 70s. So October 69 was also released Hot Rats, Zappa, King Crimson, the Court of the Crimson King, and Floyd Gamma Man, something like that. You know what I'm talking about. Okay, so fans call this the Brown Bomber. Also, Joe Louis, the heavyweight champion of the world, was also nicknamed the Brown Bomber. And talking about heavyweight, they did read in this magazine that said that Zeppelin credited as being the first heavy metal album, which I don't agree with. And reading Zeppelin didn't agree with that either, really. I mean, this is hard rock, blues rocks stuff. That's what Zeppelin are. They're not, the classic heavy metal. When you think of the original heavy metal sound or the first heavy metal album, you think of think of Black Sabbath and you think of Deep Purple, those sort of bands. But at that time, things were different. I mean, AC/DC at the time was thought of as heavy metal. They're, I always say they're hard rock, but at that time, in the 70s, they were thought of as heavy metal. So this album was actually, they sort of say, it was a little bit of a miracle that actually came out, because they were touring consistently during this period. And just let me look at my notes here. Basically, where they basically, it was actually recorded in a few different studios, a couple in London, a few in LA, and a few in New York. And basically, Plant would come on and off tour and join, what's his name, Eddie Kramer, to just do help with the mixing. They actually recorded a lot of songs in hotel corridors and lobbies, and Plant was... Okay, sorry about that, so ran out of storage space there, so hopefully I'll amalgamate, that's not a word, together, just join it together. So yeah, so they were basically recording stuff wherever they could. Studio time was hard to come by. So, so during the early 60s, Page was copying a lot of the blues artists on Chess label. This is where he's starting to, you know, recreate, copy, and reinvent. And a really nice, interesting little line that says, where it's hard to know where the original began and the innovation ended. And this is where, you know, they've been subject to many lawsuits over number of years from blues artists like Muddy Waters and Howling Wolf, and you know, not that just long ago there was about Stairway to Heaven. I think it was by a band called Spirit, who people have been showing lately. There's a song called, could be Taurus or something like that, that say it's actually, it was copied off. But you know, as I say, they, you know, all artists do. They, you know, you learn, you got people you look up to, and you try to emulate them, and you know. But it's interesting where the, what was that line I just said? Where the original began and innovation ended. I think that was a really nice, interesting line. So, okay. The interesting Page is the producer, even though it's produced by Jimmy Page. And he did something in the studio that was different, where normally the producers will put a microphone in front of the amp. Page put one there, but he also put one at the back of the room, behind the amps. And he did say something along the lines of, explain that you need to capture as much of the room sound as possible to capture the ambient sound, which is really interesting. Yeah, yep. So that bit of a thing about 2, and I'll tell you which songs I liked most and how it ranks very soon. Next up we have number 3. Alrighty. 3. So when did this come out? 3 came out in October 70. So what else came out then? You had Atom Heart Mother. You had New Mornings by Dylan. Tumbleweed Connection by Elton John. Cheers anyway. Bit of Fat Yak. All the Aussie boys like Grandma and Craig Vinyl show a bit of beer, and like a lot of people do. Anyway, but this one is a nice drop. Fat Yak. Alrighty. Okay, so this is where 3 is where they retreated to the Welsh countryside. A little small derelict cottage called Bron Iar in South Snowdonia. And it was without electricity, so obviously that added to less distractions. Not they had iPads then. Less distractions and a much more tranquility of a surrounding. And then also, with no electricity, some acoustic numbers came out, which is probably most evident inside 2. So, you know, a lot of these lyrics, actually a lot of Plant's lyrics, really showcases his voice through all of them really, but in this one as you know, is one they talk about that really showcased Plant's voice, and he's only 21 when they wrote this, so it's amazing. So yeah, Sorry. Okay, so I'll talk a little bit about if songs possibly. Okay, so that is 3. Hope this is going alright for you. And of course, when we come to 4, I'm not sure if the most commercially successful, but I mean they're all massive. So 4 came out in November 71. So what else? And it actually didn't hit number 1 in US. Number 3 did hit 1 in US and UK. Hit 1 in UK and 2 in US. Things out this time, the same month, were Tease and the Firecat, Cat Stevens. You had Carole King, Tapestry, John Lennon, Imagine, and you had the Shaft soundtrack, just a few things. Rightio, so they did cop a little bit of flack about 3, and they're sort of, and it actually disappeared. 3 disappeared off the charts fairly quickly, which left the band disgruntled and Page seething, as they put on a brave face, but a lot of the experts were saying they've gone soft. So Peter Grant knew that they couldn't rush this album. So the other ones were sort of released, January 69, October 69, October 70. So that one took a year, but then this one came out in November 71. So a little bit over a year for the next one to come out. So Grant said then he'd pull them aside, and they ended up going to it was at Grain. What was it called? Sorry about this. Might get there anyway. So basically, they knew they couldn't rush this. So cancelled proposed tours. While Page worked on an elaborate instrumental that he'd been working on, which would become Stairway to Heaven. The ramshackle farmer poorhouse of Headley Grange, that's it, in Hampshire in the UK, was the chosen retreat and allowed them to have a distraction-free zone. So, yeah, the band didn't want any credits on here. They wanted basically, this is sometimes called symbols, and these are all symbols that Page asked the band members to pick one. So that was Page's Zozo. Something was called Zoso as well. This one was plants with a feather. This one was Bonham, I believe, and John Paul Jones had that one. This is where a lot of the magical and mythical stuff came through, where Page was into that supernatural and magic, where and Plant was into Tolkien and stuff like that. So there's a lot of references to Tolkien on a few of these albums anyway, but you often hear them say Mordor, Middle Earth, Battle of Evermore, so adds a bit more of the mystique of this album. So, yep, alrighty, so that's a little bit of a spiel about them. Okay, so in what order did I get these? So I ended up getting 4 first, okay? Mine is an Australian original. It's just none of on those nice plum Atlantic labels. A lot of mine are not in very good condition at all, but I'll take what I can get. So stoked when I completed the 4. Just leave that over there. Next, I ended up getting 1. Next, which is an unknown year Australian press on the Atlantic. And then I got 3. Another one, unknown year Atlantic. Obviously all Atlantic, but there's so labels. Actually, it's got this. I had this without the little wheel thing here, and then I found a pretty rough copy, but it had the wheel without the little thing in the middle though. But that's pretty cool. The wheel when you take it out, it's very busy and pretty psychedelic and pretty cool. So yes, and then finally I got 2, which I've been looking for probably a year or 2, and finally got it at the right price. So very happy. And that's just an unknown year Atlantic as well. Okay, so rankings. Okay, coming in at number 4 is, drum roll, terrible. 4. Okay, so as I say, this is probably one that I knew the most of. But I love all these albums. Okay, so just love them all, but had to rank them. And I'll tell you, I basically, which songs I gave 10 out of 10 to on these albums. So I only had one 10 out of 10 on this album, that was Stairway to Heaven. I love it. I know people get sick of it. This is tarot card picture. And I love it. So I never get sick of it. I love a lot of the songs. I mean, side to things like Four Sticks is a little bit not a very great song, and When the Levee Breaks is a bit of a quirky, weird song. But Black Dog's great. Rock and Roll is awesome. I think Bonham just came out with that, just punching it out, and Page added some riffs into that. Stairway to Heaven pretty much was Page's idea. He did play that to John Paul Jones, and then they pretty much presented it to Plant and Bonham one night around the fire at the Grange, and most of the lyrics were written on that night. Plant with pencil in hand. I love Going to California. It's just a beautiful song. A lot of the songs I love from Zeppelin is ones that they just go slow and then just kick in with kick-ass riffs for a period of time and then just go back to a slow thing. But yeah, I mean, I love it, but it came in number 4 and it got ranked at 8.6 out of 10 with Stairway to Heaven and Going to California, probably my favourites. Coming in at 3 is their debut. This scored 9.0. Love this too. I mean, there's some really bluesy numbers. You Shook Me, which is slow and bluesy. Dazed and Confused is great. It's puts you in a bit of a trance. Communication Breakdown. Your Time Is Gonna Come is brilliant. I love that. And which songs did I give 10 out of 10? So I gave 10 out of 10 to Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You. Absolutely love that. That's that sort of slowish and then kick in with kick-ass riffs. So 1, 2, 3. 3 songs had 10 out of 10. So Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You, Dazed and Confused, and Your Time Is Gonna Come. Awesome. Love it. 9 out of 10. Comes in at 3rd. Number 2, second, which is number 3. So second place, number 3, and this got a score of 9.05. So very close to all of them. This is when they went the acoustic and slower, but still some kick-ass. Well, it's all kick-ass really. What did I give you? I'll give it. So 10 out of 10 I gave Immigrant Song. That's just unbelievable. Love it. Then I gave 10 out of 10 to Out in the Tiles, which cops a little bit of flack, and I sort of said that was put there just to give people a bit of a break between side 1 and side 2, just to regroup. But kick-ass, Out of the Tiles. And Gallows Pole, I just love it. Otherwise, sort of slow and kick-ass riffs. And yep, that was it. That's what I gave as 10. So 3 10 out of 10s. And coming in at, what this score? This scored 9.1. So very close. So 9.1, 9.05, and 9. My favourite. Just awesome. And the one I actually knew least, and I had to listen to it several times just to get it in my head. Love it. What did I give 10 out of 10 to? I had actually just had one 10 out of 10 song, but pretty much all the songs scored at least 9, several 9.5, and just Moby Dick got 8. But 10 out of 10 was Living, Loving May. Just love it. Absolutely love it. I mean, love all this. Love all these pretty much songs, but yeah, that just got the top thing. 9.5 songs were What Is and What Should Never Be. Got the Lemon song and Bring It On Home. Alright, so this is my number 1 ranked Zeppelin out of the 1 to 4. What's yours? Let me know. I'm sure I'll get some dislikes. But anyway, let me know what's your number 1 ranked, what's your ranking of the Zeppelin 1 to 4. Thank you, VC. Good to see you. Hope that was a little bit enjoyable. Or a lot enjoyable. Take care.